Most men spend years trying to figure women out. They read articles, watch videos, listen to podcasts, ask friends for advice, and yet many still feel like they're trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing. Because what women say they want, what women think they want, and what they emotionally respond to can sometimes seem like three completely different things. Now, before we begin, let's get one thing straight. Women are not a hive mind. Not every woman thinks the same way. Not every woman is attracted to the same things. Not every woman values the same qualities. But psychology does reveal patterns. Patterns that show up over and over again. Patterns that influence attraction, connection, trust, and emotional investment. And tonight, we're going to talk about those patterns. Not the fairy tale version, not the internet myth version. The real psychological tendencies that many women experience when they think about men. Some of these truths will surprise you. Some may challenge what you've been told. And one of them explains why some men become unforgettable while others are forgotten almost instantly. Let's begin. Before we dive deeper, a quick message. If you've been learning from my videos and you want to support this work, you can subscribe to me on Facebook with a paid membership, send stars, or join my YouTube channel's paid community. Your support helps me create more powerful content for you, and I truly appreciate every bit of it. All right, now let's continue. The first thing many women think about when meeting a man is not, is he attractive? At least, not in the way most men imagine. Instead, the first question is often, how do I feel around him? This is where many men misunderstand attraction. They assume attraction begins visually. For women, emotional impressions often arrive at the same time. Does he make me feel comfortable, confident, safe, interested, curious? Or do I feel uneasy, pressured, bored, awkward? Many women pay attention to emotional signals long before they consciously analyze why. And this is why two men can look very similar on paper, yet create completely different reactions. One creates comfort, the other creates tension. One creates curiosity, the other creates indifference. And that's where attraction often begins, not with logic, with emotional experience. But here's where things become even more interesting, because once a woman notices you, she starts observing something else, something many men never realize they're being evaluated on: consistency. A surprising number of women are constantly asking themselves, is this the real version of him? Think about it. Anyone can be impressive for an hour. Anyone can say the right things on a date. Anyone can create a great first impression. But consistency reveals character. And character determines whether attraction grows or disappears. Women often pay attention to patterns. How do you react when things don't go your way? How do you treat people who can't do anything for you? How do you handle stress, disappointment, conflict, success? Because eventually the performance ends and the real person appears. Now here's something fascinating. Many women aren't looking for perfection. They're looking for predictability, not boring predictability, emotional predictability. Knowing who they're dealing with, knowing where they stand, knowing that today's version of you will resemble tomorrow's version of you. And that's more attractive than many men realize. Now let's go deeper, because the next thing women think about is something almost nobody discusses: potential. Not financial potential, life potential. Many women naturally evaluate direction. Where is this man going? What motivates him? What drives him? What does he care about? Notice I didn't say, how much money does he have? That's not the same thing. Many women are attracted to purpose. A man who is building something, improving something, creating something, working towards something. Why? Because direction creates confidence, and confidence creates attraction. A man with direction feels different from a man drifting through life, and people can sense that difference surprisingly quickly. Now, before we continue, think about the most respected people you've ever met. Chances are it wasn't their appearance that stood out. It was their certainty, their purpose, their energy. And women notice that too. But we're only getting started, because the next psychological pattern explains countless dating frustrations. Women pay attention to how a man makes them feel about themselves. This is huge. Most men focus on getting attention. Many women focus on how they feel after interacting with someone. Do they feel appreciated, interesting, respected, valued? Or do they feel invisible, judged, used, dismissed? Here's the secret. People remember emotions longer than conversations. A woman may forget half the words you said, but she often remembers how she felt while talking to you. That's why emotional intelligence matters so much, and that's why some men become magnetic without understanding exactly why. Now let's discuss something that gets talked about constantly but rarely explained correctly: confidence. Most men know confidence is attractive, but very few understand why. Confidence is attractive because it communicates emotional stability. It suggests you're comfortable with yourself, comfortable with uncertainty, comfortable with rejection, comfortable with life. And that's reassuring. But here's where many men get confused. Confidence is not arrogance. Arrogance is insecurity wearing expensive clothing. Real confidence doesn't need constant validation. It doesn't need to dominate conversations. It doesn't need to prove superiority. It simply exists. And women often recognize the difference faster than men expect. Now here's where things become fascinating. Because attraction isn't always about what a man does, sometimes it's about what he doesn't do. Many women pay attention to emotional control. Can he remain calm under pressure? Can he handle disagreement without exploding? Can he face challenges without becoming emotionally unstable? Because emotional control signals maturity, and maturity signals security, and security is incredibly attractive. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed how some men walk into a room and instantly command respect? Not because they're loud, not because they're aggressive, but because they seem grounded. That's the effect we're talking about. And women notice it, probably more than most men realize. But now we arrive at one of the biggest misconceptions in modern dating. Many men think women are primarily evaluating appearance. In reality, many women are evaluating behavior. Appearance gets attention. Behavior determines value. This is why some highly attractive men struggle to maintain relationships, and why some average-looking men build extraordinary ones. Because attraction may open the door, but behavior decides whether someone stays. Now, here's another psychological truth. Women often notice effort, not performative effort, genuine effort, effort toward goals, effort toward relationships, effort toward self-improvement, effort toward growth. Because effort communicates investment, and investment communicates seriousness. People naturally value what appears valuable to others, including yourself. Now let's discuss something even deeper: trust. Trust is one of the strongest forces in female psychology. And trust doesn't come from promises. It comes from evidence, repeated evidence. Women often ask themselves, can I rely on this person? Can I believe what he says? Can I trust what he does? Because attraction without trust creates anxiety, and anxiety eventually destroys connection. Now here's something many men never hear. Women often test consistency without realizing they're doing it. Not manipulation, observation. They're simply watching, listening, comparing words with actions, looking for alignment. And alignment is powerful. When words and actions match consistently, trust grows. When they don't, trust disappears. Now let's talk about emotional availability. This is another area filled with misunderstanding. Many men believe women want endless emotional expression. Not necessarily. What many women want is emotional accessibility, the ability to communicate honestly, the ability to discuss difficult things, the ability to connect emotionally without shutting down. Because connection requires access, and access requires openness. Now here's where things become really interesting. Women often think about a man's social behavior. How does he treat waiters, friends, family, strangers? Because those interactions reveal character, and character predicts future behavior. People often assume they'll receive special treatment forever, but women know something important. The way someone treats others eventually becomes the way they treat you, and that's why those small moments matter. Now let's discuss the biggest psychological shift that occurs when a woman becomes emotionally invested. She stops evaluating attraction and starts evaluating compatibility. This is where many men make mistakes. They continue trying to impress, when what matters now is connection. Because attraction gets attention, compatibility keeps attention. And compatibility involves shared values, shared goals, shared communication styles, shared visions for the future. This stage is less exciting, but much more important. Now we're approaching the most important truth in this entire video. The truth that explains why some men become unforgettable. Women often remember how a man made them feel during ordinary moments. Not extraordinary moments, the ordinary ones. How he listened, how he treated people, how he handled problems, how he responded to stress, how he behaved when nobody was watching. Because extraordinary moments are easy, ordinary moments reveal who someone truly is, and that's where lasting impressions are formed. But there's still more to explore, because we haven't talked about one of the most powerful psychological forces in how women evaluate men, and it has nothing to do with looks, money, or status. It has everything to do with how a man sees himself. Women are extraordinarily perceptive about self-perception. How a man talks about himself when he's being honest, not how he presents himself on a good day, how he speaks about his failures, his setbacks, his insecurities, his past. And here's what's psychologically interesting. A man who can acknowledge his flaws without drowning in them is deeply attractive, not because vulnerability is weakness, but because self-awareness is strength. It takes a certain kind of security to say, I got that wrong, I'm still working on that. That part of my past wasn't my finest moment, and I'm different now. That kind of honesty is rare, and rare things carry enormous psychological value. Compare that to the man who can never admit fault, who rewrites every failure as someone else's mistake, who cannot acknowledge weakness without feeling threatened by it. That rigidity communicates fragility, and fragility, regardless of how it's packaged, is something women sense quickly. Now here's another layer that almost nobody talks about. Women think about energy. Not in a vague spiritual sense, in a very practical psychological sense. Do you add to my life or drain it? Do I feel more like myself around you or less? Do I feel energized after our conversations or exhausted? This calculation happens naturally, often without conscious thought, but it profoundly influences attraction and long-term interest. Because sustainable connection requires sustainable energy. People can tolerate emotional drain for a while, but eventually the body and mind start steering away from it automatically. That's not a choice. That's psychology protecting itself. And the men who create positive emotional energy simply by being themselves, without performing, without trying to manage the mood of the room, without demanding emotional labor from the women around them, those men become effortlessly attractive over time. Now let's talk about something that has changed significantly in recent years. And that's what women think about when it comes to emotional intelligence in men. Because this is evolving. A decade ago, emotional intelligence in men was nice to have. Today, for a growing number of women, it's becoming non-negotiable. And emotional intelligence doesn't mean a man cries freely or processes every feeling out loud. It means something much more specific. It means he can identify his own emotional states accurately. He can regulate those states without displacing them onto others. He can recognize emotional cues in the people around him. And he can navigate difficult conversations without shutting down, exploding, or making the other person feel responsible for managing his reactions. Those 4 things, that's it. And yet they remain surprisingly rare. Which is exactly why they're increasingly valued. Because a man who can do all 4 creates something that many women rarely experience. A relationship that feels emotionally safe, not boring, not without passion. Safe. The kind of safety that allows a woman to be fully herself, to disagree without fear, to have needs without shame, to express difficult emotions without worrying about managing someone else's reaction in the process. And that kind of emotional safety? It's one of the most deeply attractive things a man can offer, because it's one of the rarest. Now here's the final psychological truth, the one that ties everything together. The men who leave the deepest impressions aren't the ones who tried hardest to be impressive. They're the ones who made women feel most understood. And understanding someone requires something very specific. It requires genuine attention, not performance, not strategy, not the right words at the right time. Just real, undivided, unhurried attention. The kind that says, I see you. I'm listening. You matter to me. Not as a conquest, not as a checkbox, but as a person. And when a man communicates that consistently, not just in the exciting early stages, but in the ordinary moments that come after, something remarkable happens. He becomes unforgettable, not because he was perfect, but because he was present. And presence, in a world of constant distraction and surface-level connection, is the most powerful gift one person can offer another. That's the lesson most men spend years learning, and that's what female psychology has been pointing to all along. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And tell me in the comments, what's the biggest thing you think women notice about men that most men completely overlook? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you're interested in female psychology, attraction, relationships, human behavior, and the hidden truths behind social dynamics, check out the other videos on this channel. You might discover something that completely changes the way you understand people. And until next time, take care.